Great. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm so glad to be here. So I'm going to jump right in. I know I talk a little fast. If I'm talking too quickly, please let me know. There's a lot of fun stuff that I want to get through. But I do want to make sure there's time at the end to talk, because I would love to hear your feedback on this. This is a project that started my dissertation, like 15, 20 years ago. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's been interesting to see it evolve and also not evolve at the same pace as other reproductive technologies. So I totally welcome your thoughts. So, I'm trained as a philosopher, so I need to start off with a thought experiment. So imagine this: you're a cisgender woman on a date with a sexy man, and you go back to your place, and you're going to have sex, and you reach for a condom, and he says, no, don't worry, I'm on the pill. So the question is, could this be a reality? Like, could this actually happen? And according to studies dating back to the 1970s, so half a century, birth control is around the corner. We see that in both the public media and in scientific journals saying we're almost there. But they've been saying this again for 50 years. So when are we actually going to get there? So what am I going to do in this talk? First, I have no disclosures. Discuss why we need to develop more male contraceptives. What are some of the social factors that are leading to this disparity in contraceptives? And I'm mainly going to be talking about cis folks in this talk. But there are, I think contraception is for everyone. I will get to that point at the end. And describe what is needed for male contraceptives to be successful. So why should we develop more male contraceptives? I think the first reason is, and I'm going to have two reasons, is to unburden women. And some of you might be saying, wait a second, how are women burdened? The pill revolutionized women's, education, their life, their health outcomes, all these wonderful things. I completely agree. The pill was the first of many. It was the first contraceptive not used during or after sex. It was the first hormonal contraceptive, which paved the way for LARCs, long-acting reversible contraceptives, those ones that you can set it and forget it, like IUDs. So hugely influential and very important. And it also severed the link between sexuality and reproduction. So it gave women the same sort of autonomy to have sex as men do. So, but why is this the burden? I think this is a burden now because really the only options are available for women. There are over a dozen options for men or for women, and only 2 options for men. We have condoms and vasectomies. And so those are not really good options, as we'll talk about. And, there's this idea sometimes that, more choice, it means empowerment. Often it's used in this loose liberal way, but it's not. When I go to the grocery store and I'm looking through all the peanut butters, and they're basically exactly the same, and it takes me 20 minutes to pick one, that hasn't really enhanced my autonomy. So we need diverse and quality options. I have the Smucker squeeze here. It's probably not a quality option, but I don't know. I haven't tried it in a while. But we need diverse options, right? We need different flavors of jam and whatnot. So it's not just about more choices. It's about the quality of those choices. And right now, worldwide, women assume most contraceptive responsibility. So it may surprise you to know that about 1/3 of women do not use any form of contraceptive. So that also shows a need here. And women are involved in almost all forms of contraceptive, except for vasectomy, although often they make that decision in conjunction with their partner. And women often negotiate condom use. Withdrawal and rhythm require both folks to be involved there. So this can be burdensome in various ways. One is finances, and I know this varies from country to country, but in the US, this adds up quickly where we have a for-profit industry here, especially when many of these forms of contraceptive require that you go to the physician or that you get a recurring prescription. And there was in the Affordable Care Act a mandate in the US that said, okay, we're going to cover women's contraceptive. And no, it just said women's contraceptive. It didn't do anything for men's contraceptive, which is a problem as well. And this did save women a lot of money. But for women who don't have health insurance, they still have to pay out of pocket. And because these methods are so expensive, they're less likely to use prescription methods, which tend to be the most effective methods. And there are all sorts of health-related side effects. I'm sure you're very familiar with all these, that are quite serious. And for male reversible methods, really the only serious side effect is an allergic reaction to latex, which can be serious and deadly in those moments too, but not the same recurring list of ongoing side effects. And these side effects have sometimes been dismissed, and people say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, can't you deal with it? But this is the most common reason why women discontinue contraception. And the discontinuation rate is 50% after 1 year. That's pretty significant. So these are not just trivial to the folks who are taking it. Other burdens include things like time, going to see the doctor, going to the pharmacy to get your prescription, all these sorts of things. Psychological, being the one that's responsible for this, worrying about this, having to be like, oh gosh, I gotta take my pill, or it's time for me to see the doctor. And social, I like this little photo here. Telling the world you are pregnant is like telling the world you had unprotected sex. For cisgender women who experience pregnancy, they experience the embodiment of that. So everyone sees that. And so they, as we know, there's a lot of surveillance of pregnant women and their bodies and what they should do with them and not. And that all happens to women's bodies. And men don't get that same sort of burden that can be significant. So that's the first reason. The second reason is to increase men's autonomy. So right now, men's autonomy is limited. As I said, there's only 2 methods. There's no LARCs or hormonal methods. And the only reversible method is a male condom. And male condoms in everyday use have a failure rate of about 16%, which is quite significant. So you can see from this chart here how effective certain forms are. Vasectomy is quite effective, but the only other option men have is really not that effective. And this means that men have to trust their partners, that there has to be some sort of conversation about this, be it casual sex or a long-term relationship. And men don't have recourse for an unwanted pregnancy. And I in no way think they should. I'm not saying they should be able to demand that a woman carry a pregnancy or get an abortion or whatnot. What I do want to point out, though, is that we hold men socially and financially responsible for any children, but we don't equip men with the right tools to prevent pregnancy. So in that way, it seems a little unfair to hold them responsible when we as a society are saying, good luck, the best we have for you is a condom, which is 16% failure rate. And this disparity is codified in policies. So as I mentioned earlier, ACA doesn't cover male methods. It covers female sterilization. It doesn't cover male sterilization. So what this has led to is that couples, straight cis couples, are choosing female sterilization over male sterilization because they can get it for free rather than pay, $500, $1,000. And so this burden increases then. And things like paternal genetic testing are often not covered by policies, even if this would help the woman and, we need to have more information for her in the pregnancy. Still, it's usually an uphill battle to get that covered. So, this is not just theoretical. This, in practice, every day, the way this falls out causes real harm to real people. Okay, so hopefully you're on board. You're like, yes, we want more male contraceptives, hooray. But so let's take a detour to the past then. Why are there so few? This is not to scale diagram here, contraceptive history. So note there's a kind of big jump between 3000 BC and then, we get into the 1800s. Condoms have been around forever. And so, that's been a method people have been able to use. You'll notice a lot of these other methods from 1960 on, we really had a flurry of new methods coming out, especially hormonal methods and LARCs. And there really haven't been that many methods since the early 2000s. They're still working on stuff. This is a little bit of US history. This man with a very interesting facial hair here is Anthony Comstock. He did a lot of damage to reproductive rights in the US that are still coming back to haunt us now with the Dobbs decision and the reversal of reproductive rights in certain places. But he said that, you know, contraceptives and other things are obscene material, and therefore we should not be able to send them as through the mail. So a lot of women were getting their contraceptives prior to this through the mail, but they can no longer send it. So these companies said, oh gosh, what are we going to do? We can't send contraceptives. So they instead labeled them as feminine hygiene products. And that's kind of the loop they got around. But this also led to this new way of understanding relationships here, that contraceptives became this commercially acquired thing. It's not something that you then go to your doctor to get anymore. And it's this female controlled responsibility. So it led to some other changes and some new alignments between women and contraceptive responsibility and then neglecting men's contraceptive needs. So before the pill, all these methods had to be used during or immediately before or after sex, like the rhythm method or whatnot. But since we severed the tie between sexuality and reproduction, we've kind of just ignored and marginalized men's reproductive responsibilities here. And also, this led to a new alignment between contraception and private companies, that this became, women became contraceptive consumers. And oops, the growth in the pill in the US, you can see dramatically, again, not to scale here, but from 1962 to 1965, huge number of users. In the US, is about 10 million folks. By 1964, 25% of US couples were using the pill. It really was an overnight success, despite having some severe health risks in the earlier iterations of it. But you can see there was a huge demand for this, right? So why are there so few male contraceptives? Another reason has to do with the interaction between norms and technology. And so this might be a little blurry, I'm not sure if you can read it. It says, that's right, dear, our ancestors had tails. And, you know, I use this example because technology really shapes what our social norms are. And when I was in college, there were not cell phones. I called my parents Sunday at 8 p.m. every week. And if they didn't hear from me in between, they just assumed I was alive. You know, now if I don't text my mom back within 5 hours, you know, she'll be frantically calling and texting me and the rest of my family, you know, is she alive? So it's really changed the norms about how available we are and the way we communicate with each other. And I think the same thing has happened here with contraception. The fact that there are so many female methods and so few male methods has led us to believe that this is women's responsibility. And that's why they have all these methods for women, because it's just something women should do. And it's also moved contraception from being an option for women to basically being an expectation if they're in hetero-cis relationships, because again, this disparity in contraceptions. And these norms shape technology as well, right? Science is not this purely objective, endeavor. It's also influenced by our gender norms. And this can be seen dramatically in the fields of gynecology and andrology. So most everyone has heard of gynecology. Very few people, anyone heard of andrology? I don't know if I can see everyone, but oh, okay, well, yeah, you folks would know about it. But in most actually like bioethics audiences or clinical audiences even, a lot of folks have never heard of this, which is surprising even in clinical audiences. I talk to med students, they often haven't heard of this. And maybe your education system is just way better over there, which is probably true. But there's huge gaps in knowledge because the sizes of these fields are so different. And there's really limited funds for male contraception and other male health as well. Okay, one person has never heard of andrology. Okay, good. I feel a little vindicated here. And oops, there we go. So the field of andrology, what accounts for these fields being so different? Well, one is that andrology was established much later. It was established in like the 1950s and 1960s. So they didn't start doing contraceptive research until the 1970s. They started doing hormonal research for female contraceptives in the 1920s. So that's a 50-year head start, which can make a significant difference. Andrology is much smaller. I've gone to the annual Andrology Association conference, and I've gone to the gynecology one. The andrology one is pretty tiny. The gynecology one is enormous. And so, this means that it's minimizing medical education. As I said, many medical students don't know about this, and many clinicians don't. And it's more fragmented. So you find andrologists in OBGYN departments, in urology departments, and primary care. There's not really, most places don't have a department of andrology because it's just so small. And it's interesting to note that if you want to specialize in reproductive endocrinology in the US, if you want to be an infertility specialist and specialize in men's infertility, it's a subspecialty of OBGYN. So we still always link everything back to women's bodies, even when we're talking about men's health here. So research and development for this, pharmaceutical companies are not interested. They say this is not going to give us lots of money, like, Viagra and, all these other drugs for the aging population in the global north. WHO and other nonprofits have spent money on this, but they don't really spend as much anymore because they want to focus on female methods. And the US government has spent some money, but not a lot either because they have many other priorities. And as we're saying here, these gender norms affect our understanding of reproductive biology. So you see this cartoon, the sperm actually have little hats and bags they're carrying, and they even speak. The egg doesn't have any of that, right? And so the egg, this history of the egg is being seen as passive, the sperm being active, also contributes to our understandings of, can we make male contraception? If we see sperm as this very active, hard to pin down thing, it influences whether we think we can create a male contraceptive. And I just like this. Come on, science, it can't be that hard to cock block. There's a lot of very fun titles and things when you're looking at male contraception. I probably should have given a disclosure. I'm going to be talking about sex and reproduction and all those things kind of bluntly. Okay, hopefully you're all okay with that. The Male Contraceptive Initiative has started in the US, gosh, a handful of years ago, maybe 8 years ago at this point. And they're funded by one person who just really cares about this a lot and has a lot of money. And they're supporting scientists working on this to stop sperm in all sorts of ways. But they're one small private organization. So it can't really do all that much. But if you're interested in learning more about some of the new methods people are working on, you can check out what they have to offer. Another reason that we don't have male methods is that the side effects are often seen as emasculating. And so even for things like vasectomy, where we have, we have sterilization for women and sterilization for men, men are often hesitant to get a vasectomy because then they'll be shooting blanks and won't be a real man and all these things. And I wish I had known these balloons were around when some of my friends were getting vasectomies. I would have loved to have just shown up with them. I think that would have been fun. But it's important to note that the side effects for female and male methods are really similar. Things like weight gain, mood swings, diminished libido, and that these side effects are feminized, and people see them as acceptable for women, but not acceptable for men. And this is halting progress. So one of the cool pills that they've actually been working on is called the clean sheets pill. And this is a pill that allows men to orgasm without ejaculation. And this sounds great, right? Like no messy cleanup, all these things. And it would also prevent the spread of HIV and other STIs because there's no ejaculative fluid. However, there's been pushback from urologists and other groups saying, no, the money shot is a sign of my masculinity and I can't get rid of that. And so that has been halted. The other historical example I want to give is in the 1960s, they discovered this chemical that worked really well as a male contraceptive. But if men drank anything, they would get pretty sick. So they said, all right, we're not going to move forward with this at all because, we want men to be able to drink their alcohol and we can't do anything, gone. They're actually, in the last handful of years, they're working on this chemical again. So I'm glad they're bringing it back because they recognize it's really effective. But in the US, this is the female version of Viagra. It had a black box warning when it came out because of its interaction with alcohol. So here's a drug to promote sexual activity, to enhance sexual activity, that we're saying, no, you can't drink on this. And for a contraceptive for men, we're saying, we're not going to move forward with this because it interferes with alcohol drinking. So, just those tensions there about what we value for different groups of people and what is acceptable. So there was a trial that was halted in 2016 due to side effects. I think this sums it up pretty nicely. Men can't handle side effects women face daily, but that actually wasn't it. What happened here is that we had a very effective trial, and men really liked this. Men, in fact, said they wanted to use this method, but there were some side effects. But the vast majority of these complaints were from one site. And so rather than saying, maybe there's something wrong with that site, let's keep moving forward with it, they just shut the whole thing down. Their ethics board just said, nope, we're coming in. And I think, again, these biases we carry with us make us much quicker to pull the trigger on male contraception and stop it than we would for other types of trials involving women. So why are there so few male contraceptives? One reason is this assumption that there's just no demand, right? So there's a disconnect between the dominant cultural narratives and the empirical data. And the dominant narrative is that men aren't interested. We don't have male birth control pills for the same reason Hallmark doesn't make guy-to-guy greeting cards. Who's going to buy them? This assumption here, that's just not a manly thing, right? Just like buying greeting cards for your bros or your mates or whatever is not a manly thing to do. And this assumes then that men are not interested in pregnancy prevention. And, harkens back to these traditional gender roles of this is women's responsibility, we have this binary, this is men's responsibility. That's the narrative. But we have data going back 2 decades that show men are interested. So various studies have shown that most men think that they should take responsibility. Most men, or many men, would take contraception, depending often on certain things like education level, where they live, their views on feminism and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, even if we could get just a few of these to take it, that would be huge. So there is an interest. The other dominant narrative is that women don't trust men. And you can see this cartoon here kind of brings it up. And here's another quote from a newspaper article. How can we women get men to remember to take a pill when we can't get them to take out the garbage on a daily basis? And it's this idea that men are incompetent with household things, with the domestic realm. I do not recommend this movie. It's really bad. It's from the 80s. But it was a comedy precisely because he had to be the one at home. And he didn't know how to change diapers. And he didn't know how to, cook food or anything like that. So, when we have movies where women move into traditionally masculine realms, those are usually not comedies. Those are like serious dramas. But whenever men go into women's spaces, it's seen as a comedy. It's laughable because, that work is easy and simple and men just can't do it. Again, we have data going back 2 decades showing that women do trust men. And here, I think it's important to distinguish between trust for an individual and trust for a group. So if you have your partner in front of you, you know that person, you have a shared bank account, you're raising children with that person, you should own a house with that person, you know them, and you're more likely to trust them. But if you ask women, do you trust the average man on the street or generic men? Often they'll say, no way, because when we're talking about trust for large groups that are these, nebulous categories, we often defer to dominant cultural stereotypes. And we also don't know them, so we're going to be a little more hesitant. So what studies have found is that most women from various countries too said they would trust their partners. Only 2% said they would not trust their long-term monogamous partner. And we do see that men's involvement in the private realm is increasing. Another movie I don't necessarily recommend, but I watch all these movies that are related to like reproductive ethics. And this movie was actually trying to show men taking responsibility for childcare and that it didn't have to be as much of a comedy, like they took it seriously. It's still a comedy. Okay, oops. All right, so what is needed, third part, for male contraception to be successful? Well, if you build it, he will come. I don't know if anyone's seen this movie, hopefully, no? Okay, all right, you don't get the reference then. That's okay. This idea here is that technology is not going to be enough. And we know this because right now we have tubal ligation and vasectomy, and in almost all countries worldwide, tubal ligation rates are higher. And it's not because, the options, vasectomy is cheaper, easier, quicker, safer, all these sorts of things. It has to do with these gender norms. So I think we need to move toward a shared model of contraceptive responsibility. So what would this look like in practice? Well, more andrology education, I think, is a good start. We need our clinicians to know about this so they can educate their patients. We also need comprehensive sex education, which in the US is an uphill battle, even getting not comprehensive sex education. But I think this is really important for folks to get this sort of information. Often sex education is just about abstinence, don't have any sex, and not talking about, healthy sexual relationships and how two partners come together and share that responsibility. And we need to normalize and destigmatize contraceptive use. So, people are often embarrassed to talk about this. When we see it in the movies again, that's from the 40-year virgin. He didn't know how to put on a condom. He's trying to blow it up. A lot of movies don't show contraceptive use, but they have casual partners engaging in sex. And it would take maybe a split second to just show that quickly and just make it a normal part. So I think, there's various ways this could be done. Another option is to try to reframe reproduction as men's work. And these two ads here are from the 1980s. And so there's been a lot of movement towards like promoting healthy masculinity as a way to get men to go to the doctor, since they're much less likely to go to the doctor and to have good healthy habits. I mean, this can be problematic in and of itself. I don't want to say like reframing reproduction as men's work is perfect. It's not, but I think it's a problem if there are PSAs for girls between 13 and 15 telling them to start seeing their gynecologist, and we have nothing equivalent for boys. We don't even say to boys, go see your family care doctor. We definitely don't say, go see your local andrologist. So we are, socializing and training girls to be contraceptive consumers and to be the ones that are responsible for this, and we're not doing the same for boys. And so, it's not surprising then that we don't think that, they don't think that they should be responsible for this, or they often act like that. So what are the benefits of reproductive responsibility? I like this side. This is one more ad I put here. This is another ad of like, make it men's work. And so show that real men wear condoms. So this is a condom ad. Don't be stupid, right? You're not going to go to a gunfight naked. Don't go to sex without a condom. But I think the other thing that can be done that might help promote male contraception is to point out some of the benefits. And so some women are on hormonal contraceptives because of the non-contraceptive benefits. It reduces cramps, it clears up acne, their boobs get bigger, whatever they want, right? And so there are some non-contraceptive benefits for male contraceptives. One of the methods actually they've been working on actually boosts libido. So I think if we could use that as a selling point, or if they could like give you abs like that, then I would take that medication too. So, but we need to highlight this as well, that they're beneficial, not just in this one small area. So I'm going to wrap up here. These are the reasons why I think a male pill could be really helpful in issues of reproductive responsibility, autonomy, justice, and whatnot. And I'm hopeful that maybe someday in the future, we'll have this situation where you have a couple and he says, I'm on the pill, and just grabs it, and it's no big deal. Okay, I'm going to end there. Thank you so much.